Welcome to the Days to Happy podcast. I am delighted to speak with an old friend, Kennedy Littledyke. I interviewed Kennedy in a prior podcast, and she has an amazing story of resilience and of overcoming. And before we get into that, I just want to say, hey, how you doing, Kennedy?
I'm awesome. I'm so happy to be here. It's been a long time.
It has been, and so much has changed since that last time, right?
Yes, a lot has changed.
If you don't know who Kennedy is, you'll have to look up her story.
Crazy
Yeah.
story.
Well, what was amazing is Kennedy was in the news because a while ago, this is back in 2021, if I remember correctly, she was thrown from a car. And I'm going to let her tell the story of how that came about, but also just to give a journey of what she went through till now, I think you'll find pretty amazing. Kennedy, I'm wondering if we could go back to that story. I'm sure you've told this hundreds of times since.
Yeah, so it's a long story and I feel like I can ramble forever. So stop me if I'm like going too long or if you have a question or whatever it is.
Please
Um,
go ahead.
so it was May 22nd of 2021. That day, it was a Saturday and I had work that day. And my mom was actually headed to Logan, Utah to go do some yard work for my grandma. And she'd asked me if I would go with her. And I was like, no, I already have responsibilities of work. And I've never really been like a flaky person. If I have a responsibility, I'm going to go do it.
Right.
And she was like, oh, well, I feel like you need to go. And I was like, nope. And at this point, I had a pretty rough relationship with my parents because I was 16 years old, kind of thought they were cramp on my style. And didn't have my best interest at heart, and which is not true, but she decided she was going to go and she had a really sickening feeling she needed to turn around and come get me. And but she's like, oh, I know she's not going to go, so she left. I went to work that day and she ended up calling me and was like, hey, if you don't mind, like if you're going to be home, I need you to keep an eye on your dad. And he was diagnosed with cancer probably 2 years prior to this, I
Mhm.
believe. It's been a little while. And so he just gone through some radiation and I was like, yep, I can do that. And so I went and worked my shift and I was having kind of a hard day. And so my two best friends at the time, they decided that they wanted to come over and surprise me. And so I was like, oh, awesome, friends come over. And they were like, let's go into town. And I was like, oh, I'm supposed to stay with my dad. And they were like, oh, we'll just go for a little bit. So I was like, okay, sure. So we go into town and then we come back and we checked on him. He was good. And so we have a mountain that is about 4 miles
Right.
from my house and it's just a straight shot. And we're like, we'll just go watch the sunset up there because it's getting to that time. And so we went up there, we were watching the sunset, and my friend in the back seat, his mom had called and was like, hey, you need to head home. And we were like, that's so weird. It's literally 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, which was so different for her. And we were kind of bummed and we were like, is there any way that we could go make crepes or something at your house? Because we just loved crepes. And so his car was at my parents' house. So we had to go to my house to get his car. And then we were going to go that way because she said that was fine. But in the process of that 4 mile drive, I started crying and lost control of the vehicle. We live out in the country. And so the roads are really narrow. They don't have lines on them. And the farmers had been farming. So they were covered in dirt. And I started to go off the left side of the road, overcorrected too far, and went off the right side. And there was power lines across the right side of the road. And when we went over to that side of the road, I guess there was a ditch or something, like a little hill. And so we caught a little bit of air, and the
Oh,
power pole, we didn't clear it in time. And so the driver's side of the car hit the power pole and flipped us. So we started flipping and rolling. And every time we would flip in the air and then hit on the left side of the vehicle, which is the driver's side. And that just kept happening. And in between the pole that we hit and the next one, I was ejected and I was hanging in the power line by my broken leg. And so that's why most of my injuries are on the left side of my body because that car was just slamming on that side.
right.
And so it took a pretty good beating. And so I was left hanging in the power line. My two friends are down on the ground. And in the process, I also my arm was torn off and hanging on by the skin on my back. And so it lost all function. And if you see the picture, my arm's just limp hanging. And then my leg is actually bent in front of my face. So it was bent
Oh my
completely the
goodness.
opposite way. And when I got ejected, I slid down the wire. I actually hit my head on the pole. I have a bald spot still to this day that it destroyed the hair follicles. And so then I swung and hit it and then slid down, which power lines, if you know or not, they're very sharp. And so it just like kept tearing through my skin.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that actually, though, I think it must have severed the main artery in my leg, but then when I stopped, it pinched it off at the same time. And so I didn't bleed out from my leg. And then on the process of being thrown out as well, I was also electrocuted. And so it cauterized my main artery that was torn in my arm. So I didn't bleed out from there.
I remember the first time I heard the story. I cannot believe that that happened that way. If you're telling me that there wasn't a higher source watching over you that day, I'd say you're crazy because
Yeah.
two
Like,
major arteries that they cauterized.
yeah.
And without that cauterization, there'd be nothing.
Yeah.
Remind me though, why was it you were emotional that day?
I hate this part of my story because I find it so embarrassing, but unfortunately, like it is part of it, and I wish it just was not. But I was 16, and so obviously at that point, dating is like a big deal. And I had a boyfriend at the time, we'd broken up, and I was kind of upset about it. And then from my memory, my friend in the passenger seat had turned and showed me a picture of him already with another girl. And
Oh
so
no.
I started crying and I hate that part. It's just pathetic, I feel like. But that's the reality of the situation. And I know just everything was supposed to happen for a reason anyway. So,
Wow. Well, just since our last podcast a couple years back, you have since you met an awesome individual
yeah.
and you even got married,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
That is so amazing just to see how much happens in that short period of time. And with that being said, I have daughters, and it's very much like that, oh, that the guy thing. What would you say would be an important message? And this is me asking you because I have no clue of the ups and downs of the relationships. What would your advice be?
I just think at 16, you don't understand a lot about relationships. Guys at that age really don't act mature or treat you right or anything like that. So my advice is never at a young age like that let someone affect you that deeply.
Mhm.
Because that's unfortunate and that no guy most likely is worth it that much
Right.
heartache or losing a leg over. So
Well, only you could say that. I don't know. That's a great point, and thanks for sharing that. What I love about you is that you bring that degree of humor to that and that resilience, and that couldn't have been an easy road after that injury, after the loss of two limbs, correct? It was two limbs, right? Your leg and your arm.
yeah, so
Um,
my leg was amputated, but my arm is technically paralyzed. They did surgeries to give it some function. I still technically have it. It just does not work like
okay.
my normal one. So,
Okay. That was in your teen years.
mhm.
I can't imagine the duress after that. I'm just looking back at my age, and that would have been pretty heavy for me to handle, for anyone to handle for that sake. And looking at you now, I would never, ever have thought something that traumatic happened to you, but it's not that it's hidden. It's you've literally moved on from that. How was it initially when all the things were happening and you realized that loss was there and up to now?
Like my grieving
Yeah, you're
process.
agreeing. How, yes, that perfect. Taken from that journey from the initial happening and then getting over the grief and then getting on with your life from there.
Yeah, so interestingly, I don't know, I can't remember what I shared last podcast, but before my accident, I was actually really mentally struggling. I had a really bad eating disorder to the point I was roughly 80, 90 pounds as a junior in high school.
Wow.
And I was just working out. I would live all day, every day off of gum and energy drinks. And so I just like basically starved myself. And then I also struggled with depression to the point where suicide was constantly in my head, where I just wanted to die so badly because I thought my life was so hard. Little did I know it was going to get a lot harder, but it made me understand a lot. So then the accident happened, and being up there, I obviously had feelings of, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't. I had a experience where God FaceTimed me. I don't have my phone, obviously, but it was the picture of him with his hand through the water, and it was the end or decline and accept button. And I remember it started ringing, and obviously this is just a dream. And I started slamming the accept button, and it wouldn't answer. It just kept ringing. It wasn't recognizing that I was touching it. And finally, the screen went black, and I could see my reflection. And I was just bloody and bruised and cut. And I started to cry because I was like, "Wow, this is my reality, and I'm not. It's not my time to go home." And so I
Mm.
think at that point, a lot that was super telling to me, that I did have a purpose for this earth. And so I struggled in the hospital a little bit because the pain was absolutely unbearable. The
Mm.
amount of phantom pain that I had, and nerve pain, and just from the stitches and staples. And I literally just had open wounds all over my left side of my body. And so the most miserably painful experience ever. And I really struggled with that for a while. But as soon as I could start talking and realize that I lost my leg, I moved on pretty quick, where I started making jokes about it and trying to name my nub. And I named it Gobi, because my name in the hospital was Trauma Gobi since I was a minor. So that's what they would call me. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll name my nub Gobi. And so the nurses were like, "Oh my gosh, like she's just moving on, and she's going through these phases." And to me, I honestly don't know why I went from such a dark mental space to all of a sudden being like, "Well, this is just my path." And I truly believe it's because God was just like, "Here's a good attitude, like to get you started, but I'm not gonna uphold this for you. You have to." And so I did the hospital, felt pretty good, and then I felt like I went through a pretty dark space after the hospital. Because at that point, you don't have people that are always at your beck and call to help you with certain little tasks, and you're not watched over 24/7. And now you can't just sit in a hospital bed. You have to like go out and do things and manage being in a wheelchair and the looks of people, and um see little kids running and having fun playing in a yard, like things that you used to be able to do watching people in real life again is a really hard adjustment. At least it was for me. So I started struggling for a little bit there, but I decided to surround myself with good friends and just still try to put myself out there. And at this point, I'd started social media to try to shed light on, like, bring humor to my accident. And the internet loved it because obviously the internet loves really gruesome, gory, gross things. And so they
Oh.
thought it was amazing.
Mm.
And my story started to get a lot of traction. And I started struggling again because then the internet was really mean, and I got called a liar, and that
Mm.
this never happened to me, and said that I deserve it, and like just nasty
Yeah.
comments. And I decided to move forward because I was like, I think this is therapeutic for me to
Mm.
get this out there. And I feel like if I have to go through this, I'm going to make the best out of my situation. So I kept chugging along, and now I'm at where I'm at, where I've made it a full-time career. I love doing social media. I've gone past the accident stuff. Every once in a while I'll post something about it, but other than that, it's really just like my daily life, what I'm doing. And like I said, public speaking is also one of my favorite things because I get to share my story, and then you can tell and see how it's transformed other people's lives just by hearing it, or just that they're like, you gave me the stepping stones of what I can do to be mentally better. And so I felt like throughout this time, I figured out how to be mentally tough and find skills to help cope, or different things to just get my mood back to where it needed to be.
You brought some pretty heavy things over there, and why this is so not only inspiring but also fascinating to me is you had mentioned you were in a very dark place, suicidal thoughts, anorexia, depression, and you would think after a crazy accident like that that would compound that.
Yeah.
And I know you had some ups and downs. What do you think was the what was the, I don't know if protagonist is the right word, but what do you think kickstarted the mindset into that? Instead of worrying about those worries before, now they were no longer worries. Would you say that it started because you were a survival mode, or it's such a dorky question, but just
No,
what?
I think it was just, yeah, partly survival mode. You kind of don't have a choice because you either live or you die, and then you either are sad or you're happy. And at that point, like I felt like I finally had a purpose. And then I also had really like a lot of determination and stubbornness my entire life. My parents always hated it. They were so frustrated about it raising me because they're like, I don't understand, like I don't know how to parent you. And then that all happened, and they were like, this makes so much sense. This is why you were born the way that you were, is because you had a greater purpose here on this earth that you needed to fulfill. And in order to do that, you had to have those qualities about you. And so I think I've just always had this attitude of like, no, I'm going to show you, because I don't like people when they say, oh, you can't do that just because like you're disabled, and it pisses me off. And so I'm like, well, I will do it. And then I do know how strong I am, and I like to prove that to myself and then others, and be able to show that strength so then others can have inspiration from it as well.
Oh, okay. So now it's a few years, you've healed up, you've started all these social things. There's always going to be naysayers. And me, just it's so easy that someone told me it's so easy to be a judge and a critic. And you've seen that over and over again. What would you say is pivotal for people to understand to get away from defining yourself by other people's opinions of you?
I guess mine, I don't take advice or believe things that from people that I wouldn't ever take advice from, or that I admire. And so like I really only take criticism if it's from someone that I really respect and that I love, because the people that I don't love and respect and that have a pattern of acting that way, what you say doesn't define me. Like I'm confident in myself, and I have enough people that do love and respect me, and it's mutual, that do tell me the good things, and then they can also give me that tough love. And there's just no need to listen to miserable people on the internet or even in everyday life that are jealous. I get comments or people literally be like, the only reason you're successful is because you were stupid at 16. And it's like,
What?
okay. And they're like, you've just got handouts ever since. And I was like, but that's funny because there's a lot of people that are disabled that I know that after they go through something, don't do anything because they physically can't pick themselves back up and they don't get handouts. I
Mhm.
decided to put in the work to put myself out there, and if you're going to put yourself out there, you have to come to terms with that you're going to get judged, and you just have to brush it off and not let it affect you, because if you do, it will crush you.
That is some fantastic advice because they, for some reason, the critics do come out of the woodwork, don't they?
Yeah.
And I love what you said too, is get the feedback from the people you love. It reminds me of early time in my career, I was a facilitator and I asked this one consultant, I go, what do you do with the feedback? And he goes, I don't listen to any of it. I just go ask my, I just go ask the coworkers that I trust and know what they're doing. And it was so revelatory to me because I was so enamored by the feedback that you get from the audience. And it's very interesting to hear that point of view because we all do it. It's easy to get caught in that trap. You also brought up sometimes people can't get out of their funk. And I know you said you were stubborn and that it's, oh yeah, tell me you can't, I'll go do it.
Yeah.
But what are some of the steps that you yourself took to get out of the funk? You went over some of those. But then also, if you come across someone that is in a funk, at what point do you just say, okay, this is all you?
I think it's really up to that person. You can only say so much, and they can choose to feel inspired by that for a little while, and then they're like, oh, and don't do anything about it, and then it's going to go away. But I think my biggest piece of advice is the choose your hard.
Mm.
Because I know what it's like to be sad and miserable and hating your life, and that's really hard. That part of life is honestly miserable, but you don't get anything positively out of it other than beating yourself up. You don't get those endorphins, nothing. You just are sad, and that's hard. Or you can choose your heart of working hard and putting yourself out there and making new goals and choosing that life for yourself, because either way your disability is not going away. Whatever struggle you're struggling with is not going to go away most likely, and so you get to choose how you want your life to be. And so I guess I go from the more tough love aspect, because
Yeah.
it's like, what do you want for yourself? I'm not going to tell you what you want. No one is going to tell you what you want. You have to find that out for yourself, and if it's important enough to you, you'll do it. For me, I decided to put myself out there, and I've got so many opportunities of going to travel because of speaking. I work hard in the gym because that makes me feel good and it makes me see progress. And is that hard? Yes, especially on days that you don't feel it and you're exhausted, and maybe I have a sore from my leg or whatever it is, but I just know the benefits of that are going to be so much better. And so you get to choose what benefits you want and the life that you want for yourself. And if someone tells you that's not realistic, it is realistic, because you get to choose what side of mental health you want.
What blows my mind is how much you've learned over the course of these last couple of years since we last spoke. You could tell that you have incorporated a lot of these amazing lessons learned. And not only have you inspired others, but you've been able to do for yourself. So I gotta go there. You're now husband. How did that all come about? Now this is away from the mental stuff, but how did that all come about?
Yeah, so we met actually almost exactly a year after my accident. So it was about a year after, and we just met. We didn't talk, and then because my childhood best friend was dating his brother, and so she was having a graduation party, and his whole family came, and that's when I met him. So that was in May, and then in July they always throw a really big Fourth of July party, and I wasn't even gonna go, but I was like last minute, I was like, I have a feeling I should go, and so I went. And he was there. I had no idea he was going to be there. And I was like, I feel like this is a sign or something. I don't know. Anyways, and so I told my friend, oh, like, I see that your boyfriend's brother's here. And she was like, yeah, we should set you guys up to meet. And so we were watching fireworks together, got to talking, and we went our separate ways. And I was like, okay, because we didn't exchange numbers or anything. And then later on, I think I'd followed him just on Instagram, because I was like, oh, we'll just see. And I really didn't know if anything was going to come out of it. Thought he was cute and all. And then he ended up messaging me and was like, I'd love to take you on a date. And so we were like, oh, we'll just set up a group date. And so we just went on a double date with his brother and my friend, and we just really hit it off. And so I also had a problem. I didn't want to commit. I was so scared because I don't know, obviously, like, I was still at that point processing a lot of what had just happened, and I didn't feel quite ready for some of
Yeah.
those things. And I'd always been so afraid of someone loving me after the accident. I didn't know if anyone ever would, and I had so many insecurities. At that point, I also had a suction leg where it would only stay on due to suction, like there's nothing else. And so
Mm.
I have such a short nub that it would lose suction a lot, and so it would fall off, and I would get I'd be like, I'm gonna warn you, like, my leg's off, and because I was just so ashamed.
Right.
So it's crazy to see, like, just how different it is now. And so then we started dating finally in January of 2023, I believe. And then we did long distance for about a year and a half. And then I moved to his town for about a year, and we got to spend so much time with each other and his family, and we grew such a great relationship, because I just think it's so important to have that relationship with your in-laws or your
Yeah.
future in-laws or whatever. And we'd known we wanted to get married at that point, and so we just took some time, and then we got engaged July of 2024. And then we were married October 25th of 2024. Gosh.
Oh, that is so awesome. My goodness. And just overcoming those securities in and of itself is such a tough one. How did he make that a comfortable transition? Because suction, when you told me about the suction in the leg, I even felt a little bit of anxiousness right there, and
Yeah.
it fell off. How did he make it so it was a safe environment?
He just was like, I don't care. Like I always am so grateful. Like lots of people always they'll date the people that they were with before something traumatic happened to them,
Yeah.
life altering. And for me, I just don't know if that could ever work for me because I would be so paranoid of like you didn't fall in love with this version of myself.
Mhm.
And so what gave me a lot of comfort is because I would always be like, oh, like I don't know why you're with me when you could just have someone that's normal. And he's just like, I love you for exactly who you are. And it doesn't bother me. And it's funny because my dad were religious and he'll be like, oh, in the next life, just wait, she'll be normal again and yada yada yada. And it actually makes him upset because he's like, I don't if she was never had two legs again or a fully functioning arm, like I would still love her just the same. That's how I fell in love with her. Like I don't need her to look any other way. And so that gives me a lot of security that like
Wow.
he truly just does love me for the person that I am and physically what I look like.
Wow. I want to give your hubby a high five, man. He sounds like quite the guy.
He is.
That is amazing. I've got to ask, what types of things would you like to say to the audience, especially when it comes down to mental resilience and belief in self?
I guess mental resilience, something that also gave me a lot of confidence is sometimes because part of mental health, like I said, was an eating disorder.
Mhm.
And for that, for me, dealing with that now, I've gotten a lot better and I feel like I've healed, but sometimes I do have those feelings because the last time I was normal, I had an eating disorder. And so confidence outwardly is a really big thing for me. And so what gives me confidence is knowing the intentions of my heart and mind and what's on the inside. And eventually that will show out. And so I truly believe if you start being a good person and acting like that and
Yeah.
knowing who you are, just cut out the noise of people because high school's hard with people constantly criticizing you and saying mean
Mhm.
things. Just be the best person you know you can be. And I promise you, every bit of confidence that is good will come from that. And it's pure confidence. And so that's what I'd have to say about that. And then just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. It doesn't mean you're a failure and you don't know what to do. You're not broken. You're just trying to figure it out. And there's different phases of life that are really hard. And you just have to find what works for you to give you those natural endorphins or get you out of that funk. And that's not always going to be a positive thing. Sometimes mine's just mindlessly scrolling because I just want to mind them
Yeah.
when I am going through those things, but just try to find things that make you happy. And again, you get to choose how you live your life. And if that's the way you want to live it, that's okay. But just do the steps and get help, whether that be get a therapist or get on medication if you can't do it yourself. But there's resources, there's people that love you, and you just have to use them.